Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Gibbs. I'm the Virginia Section Public Information Coordinator, and I hang out with these two guys to just bring fun and cheer for everyone. Tonight, I had to chase after this guest. He keeps running. It's like Forrest Gump. I had to follow him all over the state of California, but finally got him. And I'm pleased because I own one of his products. Actually, several of his products. And tonight we're going to have Eric Swartz, Whiskey Alpha 6, Hotel Quebec. He is Elecraft's Chief Operating Officer, and he gets the long one tonight, Eric. A co-designer of Elecraft's K4, K3S, K2, and other transceivers, and co-founder of Elecraft in 1998. Congratulations. With Wayne Burdick, who's also a great guy, November 6 Kilo Romeo, licensed 49 years. He credits his early interest in amateur radio with leading him to a career in electronic design and management. He received his bachelor's in engineering and applied science from Yale University, so he's bona fide, and has been involved in a number of successful Silicon Valley startups. Prior to Elecraft, Eric was co-founder and president of Verisys, a test equipment manufacturer of high-performance protocol analyzers for the mass storage market. Wayne and Eric have both been inducted into the QRP Hall of Fame and also jointly received the ARRL's Technical Excellence Award in 2001 for their Elecraft designs. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Eric Swartz, Whiskey Alpha 6, Hotel Quebec. Take it from there, Eric.
Thank you, Ed. I'm glad to be with everybody here today, and I don't know if I can live up to that introduction, though, but I'll try my best. And I've got some stuff covering both the history of Elecraft a little bit, so we'll go through that and give you a feel for how it started and sort of things that were successful and missteps along the way and all sorts of fun stuff that we had as we grew the company. And then we'll slide into showing you some of the new stuff too and see what's going on with that. I'll also talk about how the products came out over the year for those of you that haven't followed us. So let me, I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint. I'm going to share my screen with that, make sure I get that right, and we'll start here. Okay, so actually this is our 22nd year, so it's about 21.6 years of Elecraft. Scary but true. And it's amazing sometimes when I look back that it's gone so fast. I'm sure those of you that have been in this in various businesses over the years, that always when you look back say it's amazing that it's passed any milestone like that. So we've grown quite a bit over the years from just a few people in our basements. And I'll give you a little history here. So go to the next slide. First of all, who are we? As both I mentioned before, both of us actually are been licensed coming up on 49 years here. Next year will be the 50th. We were both licensed in 1971. We did not know each other as kids. If you look under each of us, our original calls, Wayne, who's N6KR now, was WN6HQH, and I was WN6HHQ. So I got it a little bit before him, but you can see we just reversed the letters. So something, I used to joke with people that those California karma, saying that two California kids, I was in Northern California, he was down in Southern California and near San Diego, would eventually bump into each other many years later in the 90s to get involved starting this company. Wayne's background, he certainly done a bunch of QRP radio designs. Some of you guys in that community may have seen this NorCal 40. The Sierra, which I actually helped him design a little bit of, and the super simple transceiver, the SST. He did those actually while he was working in Silicon Valley for Interval Corporation, which was a think tank Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft, had set up. And Wayne said it was like getting paid to be in grad school for 8 years. But I talked him out of working there once we had started working on the K2 to jump full-time into Elecraft. His background, by the way, is in cognitive science from the University of California, San Diego. He's always worked as a design engineer and mostly the radio area, but also into some digital design firmware. And does a great job, just an absolute brilliant designer. My background from the Northern California area, the Bay Area, across the bay from San Francisco, and I am a background in electrical engineering, certainly as an instrumentation designer, and then management and hardware and software design in Silicon Valley. Got involved in a lot of startups and was running the last one that I'd done, Verisys, right about the time we met each other and started looking at designing our K2 radio, which we'll pop on here next. But what got us together was interesting. It was this radio here called the NorCal 40. And I don't know if any of you guys have built this. Usually when I'm talking to a live audience, I can get people to raise hands and see how many. And usually there's a bunch in the audience. This was a single band 40-meter full solder kit that had no wiring harness. It was pretty cool. And I saw this at a little ham fest that I went to and picked one up and built it. And I'll give a little background here. I went to the Monterey, California Winter Fest, Ham Fest. And this NorCal 40 radio, which was designed by Wayne, was a club kit from the NorCal QRP Club. I was not a QRPer. I had a big amplifier, an Alpha 87A with a big TS 950 radio, Kenwood radio in those days back in the 90s, and was working DX on there. But I thought it'd be sort of fun to get back to doing more design instead of just managing companies, and picked up this little kit this QRP Club had come up with. And I thought I might make a few contacts on it. And another friend and I bought one, and we ended up competing with each other. We were both DXers, and he had the bigger antenna, though. He had worked 120 countries to my 108, but on 40 meters CW, that wasn't a bad deal for about 12, 13 months of work. So that convinced me you could even have fun at 5 watts too, but I still keep the big stuff around also. That year, 1994, I also met Wayne at the NorCal QRP Club. We'd have meetings out at the California Burger outside of Silicon Valley in Livermore. And there would be like 35 people at these. We'd take it over in the morning before their lunch. They opened for lunch, and they'd give us breakfast there. And we'd have all the booths with guys with projects. And there was a design type of crowd. So it was sort of neat. Everybody was modifying stuff and hot rodding their radios and designing new ones. And I met Wayne there, and we started operating Field Day and other operations together with friends out in the field through 1995 and 6. And actually at Field Day, I think in 1996, we started talking about what our ideal Field Day radio would be, and it ended up being the K2 transceiver. We started doing serious design on it in 97 in the evenings in our basements, and literally just talking on the phone while we were blowing things up, and smoke was coming out of them and stuff. And the K2 was designed sort of be a replacement to the sort of Heathkit style, where you could build your own radio. For those of you guys that have, like myself, who built Heathkits, I think I built my first Heathkit back when I was 14 years old. Newly licensed. It was a vacuum tube voltmeter, the IM18, and again, solder everything together though with tubes in those days and some transistors. We wanted to recreate that feeling. So in 1997, we actually introduced our design concept at the ARRL PacificCon convention in Northern California in Silicon Valley, and actually up in Concord, just north of there. And this was a picture on the lower right here. You can see the picture of our concept of what a K2 would look at. We had not actually done more than putting pencil to paper on some circuits, and Wayne was doing the mechanical design also and came up with this. And of course, we had about a big crowd, about 80 people in the room. We had a little PowerPoint type presentation like this, and we were showing people, backing up here, what the inside would look like. At the time, we thought it was going to be vertical plug-in cards. We ended up changing to a more horizontal plug-in design, more compact. We realized that you shouldn't have the lead-acid internal battery option mounted on standoffs on a circuit board, because you can imagine what might happen with that weight. This was a 2.9 amp hour one, the width of the radio. If you dropped the radio even straight down, it would snap the circuit boards. And so we ended up mounting that to the top cover. You learn by doing sometimes in designs. This one never got very far past an early prototype, but we realized, nope, that's not going to fly. But we showed that to the group there. We actually had a foam mock-up showing the whole thing with the boards and everything. And in terms of looking at what it was going to look like. And we got a lot of response from people. We were surprised. So that gave us some energy to keep going. Though I think 99% of the people thought this was going to be another ham radio flame out, great idea on paper, and it will never see the light of day. But it did. In 1998, those were the first circuit cards. And you can see some folks call this a Silicon Valley drug deal, but not so much meeting in a parking lot to exchange drugs out the trunk of your car. Instead, it's electronics. And this is pretty common. So this was caught by one of our other friends we were having dinner with at a local restaurant. And I was handing Wayne the first prototype circuit boards that I got back from the fabrication house that we had laid out for the K2 transceiver. So that was, I forget when in '98, but it fairly early in the year there. A couple of things, by the way, on startup ingredients. So for those of you that either have, you may laugh, those who've been through startup companies, you'll recognize a lot of this. The first question people that were not ham radio people in Silicon Valley said when we told them we were starting a ham radio company was, "Are you guys crazy? These guys don't buy anything and they're too cheap." But we felt we had a good design, and we also felt we were targeting a part of the market where we could actually survive in terms of the higher performance part of the area, which people didn't even know we were doing yet. We'd kept that sort of a secret, but the K2 actually was going to be a high performance kit radio, not just a low end kit. So a couple things. First of all, obviously you have to work hard and sleep. You don't always get as much as you think you're going to get, so you forget about that after a while. One thing that's really important, you see a lot of small businesses in ham radio start as a hobby sideline. And yeah, you can sell something very cheap and get into the market and get a lot of customers for that. And then as you try to scale up to actually produce that, your costs go up, and all of a sudden, surprise, you can't make it at that level. And a lot of people just don't survive. They don't make the adjustment to actually target the market in a way where you can actually make enough profit to survive. So you have to be profitable from the start. And we self-funded this. So cash flow is important. We couldn't do negative cash flow for very long, and we structured it so that we got people to commit to buying radios up front, which helped an awful lot. Obviously, employees is key. So obviously, employees that care about the customer, we've done that from the start. And those of you that have talked to our support and other folks realize that that permeates the whole organization. We really try to make sure they're customer oriented. A lot of it's virtual. We can hire engineers up and down the West Coast. We do have obviously a factory and facility now in Watsonville, California, just south of me on the Monterey Bay. But we can also get people where they live. We have some engineers in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. Wayne lives 60 miles north of me in Belmont near Stanford on the San Francisco Peninsula. And that worked out really well for us. And then you turn your customers into product evangelists. Our first 100 customers were early field testers that literally helped us debug the design as we produced that, and they bought those radios up front. So that was huge, both from a cash flow standpoint, but also once the radios work, it's got to be better if you built it, right? So we had 100 people out there telling their friends about it, and that just bootstrapped the whole thing. We had a little tiny website back in 1999 or 98. I think I set it up in 1998 September, and I did all the original hard coding on it, which was a hack, but it worked well in those days, and much simpler than what we have today, certainly. It lasted a long time. We finally switched over to something newer the last 3 years, but that was amazing. We had no print ads the first year, and we were selling K2s and survived. So that was sort of neat. A couple other things I mentioned, we used it for viral marketing, people telling their friends. That was big. And also our first tech support engineer, Gary Swartz, I'll show you a picture in a little bit. We found on our email discussion list, he was helping customers for free. And as we grew, and I couldn't do it anymore because I was too busy trying to run the company even as we grew, and also working on new designs with Wayne, we got Gary on board. He lived in Chandler, Arizona, and stayed down there and was our customer support engineer for a long time on his own before we brought somebody else on board and did a great job. Finally retired a couple of years ago. Obviously, you still have to have fun with it. We actually use our products to get out in the field and do that, and we got to listen to our customers. And having an email list is great marketing. You can't hide from it. If the customer's unhappy, you're going to find out, and if they're happy or want something new, you hear great ideas out there. So you want to keep them happy no matter what, too. That's really important. Matter of fact, I've even kept customers happy when I'm losing money on a deal, just because if it's in a gray area where they think we did something wrong, we're going to keep them happy. So we make sure we stay with that. It helps in the long run, certainly. Move fast. We design it, build it, fix it, adapt it to the market, turn it, go through several revisions quickly, so we can find our product problems and get them out there fast to people as fast as we can. It seems like always too long for you guys, but most folks don't realize what it takes to bring a product to market and design it. And in a lot of ways, we go faster, and certainly I've seen things move to other places I've worked. And obviously have great products with new technologies and have a good time, and then keep working even harder the next day. Here is the K2 prototype from 1998. It's a little different than ones we actually sold. The little second board in there behind the front panel was the microprocessor control board. We ran out of room. We had to expand it to the whole width of the chassis. So in production, a few things changed, but the overall idea was boards that plugged into each other, which is a lot of point-to-point wiring. That worked out real well. This was a demo actually at the California Burger. I don't have it in the background on this shot. I might have it in the next one. This was in the parking lot after showing off the radio to the guys and taking the covers off. This is before we even had paint on the case, the first two sheet metal prototypes. But they were working on the air. We actually had an antenna up behind my car here at the time and making contacts. That's Wayne when he had a lot more hair. He hasn't caught up with me yet, but he's slowly getting there. And from the other angle, you can see the California Burger in the background. And a few folks that have been around for quite some time. And the fellow in the red is Chuck Adams. I think he's K7QO now, very fast CWO. And quite a few other folks who are active hams for a long time. There we were on Field Day 98. We had some of the first production K2s or pre-production K2s out with paint and everything on them. And we operated very near another group that was the Sierra Radio Club that was operating at 100 watts, and they couldn't figure out how we were operating right next to them, a couple of kilohertz away on CW. And they came over and checked us out. We weren't even hearing them when we were doing that because the radio had great dynamic range. And they checked us out, and actually a lot of them have our radios now. So we had a great time. That was Wayne and I operating together for Field Day that year. I think that was our first marketing picture of the K2 with a nice Shure portable wobbler I had, shot with bedspreads put over my lab bench. But hey, it worked, and it was in our first ads on the QST, I think, also, 1998. We also went the other direction versus all the Japanese radios coming here. We got it to Japan, and that's a picture from the cover of their CQ ham radio, which is, those of you who've seen them, they're almost a 3/4 of an inch thick every month. And that's the K2, and then the NorCal QRP Club radios. The one on top of the K2 is a Sierra, which I helped Wayne design, and the bottom left is the NorCal 40 and the SST above that. And that's what they looked like. Actually, those two blue ones, the NorCal 40 on the left and the Sierra, were actually picked up by a friend of ours that was in the QRP Club and was making those as kits when we were first starting Elecraft. He was actually helping us do some kitting for the Elecraft products originally. Bob Dyer, and he's moved to Joplin, Missouri after working in Silicon Valley. And I don't know if he still makes these anymore, but those were sold commercially by him for a long time. And there we're shipping the first 100 field test K2s. That was January 22nd, 1999. So we count that as the official start on the company, though we were definitely working like crazy. I went full-time July of 98, and Wayne went full-time, I think, right at the beginning of January 99. So that was his first big jump to working for himself too. So that was scary true. We designed the whole radio so we could fit them inside of priority mailboxes, those little flat ones. And we showed up with these at the post office, and I think we had 25 in the back of the car. And they said, "What's all this?" And we said, "Oh, these are ham radio kits we're making." And they look at us sort of funny and said, "Oh, is this all of them?" I go, "No, we'll be back with some more." We had 4 loads in my back of my car to bring them over to them. And we got to know the local post office really well for the first 10, 15 years of operation at that location before we moved down to Watsonville. That was in Aptos, where I live, just north. First office in Aptos, we moved out of the basement in my house for the lab in 1999. We had 2 suites in this little off the side in the Old Town Aptos, they called it. This is a small town south of Santa Cruz on Monterey Bay that is about a mile off the water. And it's a commuter town for people going into Silicon Valley or people going to UC, University of California, Santa Cruz. And the rest of the area is retirees and folks either working in agriculture to the south or the vacation industry for Santa Cruz and stuff to the north. They have an amusement park and beaches all around the bay here. Let's see the inside of the office here. Hold on. Here we go. There's the palatial administration office with the old kitchen table from my house and my workbench, our work table over on the side there. And eventually we had my wife in there helping me start at Lerma. You'll see her in a picture in a little bit. And then our production area here with another friend of ours helping do assembly. This was the second suite. And that was Elecraft in 2000, making all of our K2s and K2 accessories. So a massive operation, but we looked a lot bigger to the outside world. But and that's a tech bench in the back for repair on radios too, when customers had problems with them and sent them back. Usually with connectors on the wrong side of the board, put in about 2 o'clock in the morning when we're excited and building stuff. Here's a bunch of early Elecraft production radios that people surprised us with. We were at a little show in Fort Tet Hill, Arizona. There's Wayne and I in the middle. And a bunch of customers said, "Hey, come on outside in the flea market. We've got a few of your radios we built." And they had all their radios they built up. These are all working K2s. I think it's a K1, which we'd introduced at that time in the middle, a little radio. So we had a lot of fun there. So we enjoy ourselves while we were growing the company too. By the way, we have crazy customers. This guy called us up in, I can't remember the year, but it was right around that same time that said, "I want to buy a K2 kit. Oh, and by the way, I'm taking it to Antarctica and I'm leaving in 2 weeks. Can you get it to me quick enough?" He was going to build it and take it. And I said, "I don't know if you're going to get it built and working and everything in that time frames." It took quite a bit of time in those days to build the first one, 20 or 30 hours for customers. Once they built, one guy built multiple ones faster than that. But he did. He got it down there and worked hundreds, if not thousands, of people from McMurdo Station and, with a K2. So that gave us a clue that it was going to be pretty popular for de-expeditions. One of our other customers came up with this Elecraft Kool-Aid drinker thing. Some of the aircraft customers were so strong evangelizing about the radio that other folks would call them Kool-Aid drinkers. And I guess people took that as a badge of honor. He made these little stickies that people could put. I never put that on our webpage officially. I didn't want to get in trouble with the trademark, but it was sort of cool at the trade shows. One of the things we found out at shows is people would introduce themselves with the serial number of their radio. We didn't obscure the serial numbers. So low number was like the first guys, if you're in the first 100 or 200 or first 1,000. You probably can't see it on this picture on Zoom, but those are their serial numbers dialed up on the frequency dial for each of the radios they had. K2's in the middle, K1, which I'll show you in a second, on the left, and a KX1 on the other side. So they're definitely crazy. We have a lot of them out there. Then we introduced the K2-100 in 2000. I was working on this the prior year on it, and we got it out pretty quickly. That was a top panel, a top cover that gave you a 100-watt amplifier for the radio internally. And that got us in the big leagues. Now people were really taking it on DXpeditions and other places. Came out in 2000 also with the K1 transceiver. This is a little portable radio, low current drain. You could run it and receive off the 9-volt battery. It wouldn't transmit very long. We sold quite a few of those, 5 watts, internal tuner. You could put AA cells inside. It was a great little CWQRP radio. This was Dayton 2001. Gary Cernsey, that first tech support engineer, is on the right side of the picture, out of Chandler, Arizona, outside of Phoenix. That's my wife, Lerma, KD6ANH, and I knew she was going to be a keeper when she got her ham ticket, I think 6 months after I met her, and didn't even tell me she was doing it. So that was fun. She's a retired Silicon Valley engineer now. And myself, and then Wayne, who looks tired because I think he was staying up all night getting the last pieces of, I think, the K1s for that show, which we were, I think they've been introducing him at that show along with the K2. And when you work Dayton, by the way, by yourself at a booth like this, you're working 18 hours a day plus with minimal sleep, both getting ready for the show and at the show. And of course, you have to go to events at night too. So we were probably very tired when this picture was taken. And we had a single booth then, and it's since expanded to something more than 40 feet long at Dayton. So we've got a big booth there for those of you who've seen it. 2002, we moved to a larger facility. This was above a grocery store, a sort of an outdoor set of offices, sort of up on a little hill behind the grocery store. And so we could go downstairs to the deli. We ended up taking about 5 or 6 suites over in this complex before we moved into our later production facility. 2004, we introduced the KX1. This was the first of the extreme portable radios. That's what the X stands for. And this had an optional built-in paddle, CW only, could receive sideband, but a good little performing radio with internal AA batteries and internal auto tuner options. So we started coming out with portable radios you could take for mountain topping. This became actually, before SOTA was a thing for summits on the air, people were taking these portable all over the place. And 2007 is when we really had our big breakout here. This is when we entered the big leagues, even really big time. We came out with the K3 transceiver, and because the K2, which actually had gotten ranked right up near the top of the charts on receiver performance. That's really, when ARRL reviewed it, got people's attention. And the K2 was being taken on DXpeditions in the 100-watt version and very popular. The K3 had to outdo that. And then we put a lot of work in to do it, and we did. And it had even better performance. Of course, in a radio that was now a larger radio, we offered it assembled, not just kit. And it was modular assembly in the sense that the boards were pre-assembled and tested, but so it was a quicker build. And this became our key radio from 2007, and then eventually became K3S, which I'll show you in a little bit, which we just finally discontinued this year. So it's had a fantastic run with tens of thousands of them out there, and for those of you who have them, I'm sure you've been happy with them. We certainly have. And, I've got one down my basement that I'll never let go. This is our first K3 production test area in the shopping center offices. Renee, who those of you I may have talked to on the phone, one of our lead techs over on the left. Dale, who's no longer with us, and then Vic, who also is still with us. These are all hams too. Pretty basic, quick test area for K3s. These were being built actually on this rack, I believe at that time, for the Ducey Island DXpedition. I think it was VP6DX, and they had talked to us at Dayton that year in May, talking us into our first production shipments, which went out in October. They were going in December, I think, to ship the radios or taken down to Ducey Island and putting it on the air for a big DXpedition. And we built these for them and shipped them down to them. And they took them, and we were a little scared. That's the first time we had something beat up that hard, but they ended up doing very well. Top DXpedition of the year that year, too, in terms of contacts. 2011, we came out with the KPA 500, so we entered the amplifier market, and these have been probably one of the most popular 500-watt amplifiers, 600-watt amplifiers in the market out there. It's done incredibly well. We still sell it to this day. It's just a brick, and it's the same size as the K3. And I operate my K4 and my K3 with it, K3S I have now, and it's just a full pin diode TR amplifier, silent transmit receive, just like our radio. By the way, we do that in all the radios, and all the amplifiers are pin diode switched. And then 2009, we also came out with the P3 pan adapter, and all three together, we started calling them the K line. For those of you who've been hams for a while, you remember the old S line from Collins, and we unabashedly plagiarized that concept for the K line, and we've stuck with it, and it's worked out real for everybody. Obviously, you can see the same size and everything there. And interesting enough, the pan adapter in the middle is a direct sampling receiver. It's a direct to an analog digital converter like you hear the newer radios using. And then we did what's called the fast Fourier transform, a very fast digital signal processing chip. And I could display that on the screen, real-time signal strength and waterfall, so you could see what was going on. And in 2012, since we were selling so many K3s, we had to move to a bigger facility. This is in Watsonville, which is only about 10 minutes south of Aptos, where I live, and where the original company facilities were. But we take up a good portion of this building, and we continue to expand into it. And over the years, we've taken on more space. And around the side, there's a big loading dock for our production area. On the front side, you see here, we've got our admin offices and some engineering up there for in-plant engineering, marketing and sales, and then in the back, we have our test tech area, where all the techs both repair radios, but also test all the production final stuff before it goes out the door. So we look a little more official now. 2011, this is the first really big SOTA radio in terms of taking over that market for a while. This is the KX3, 160 through 6 meters, and something you could hold in your hand and weigh less than a couple pounds with internal batteries. And all modes, sideband and CW. You can even do RIDI like the K3 can do it, where you send with the paddles and CW and converts it to RIDI and decodes it on the VFOB display on receive. So internal auto tuner option, the works. So I think that was a big success. This is one of the ads that we ran in QST at that time. By the way, we came through with the K3. We also were interested in remote control over the internet, and we did a remote panel that let you do that. And this was both either for software programs on PCs or for dedicated remote control boxes. It's called remote rigs that you could add to it also. So those have been very popular. We sold them all around the world. And actually, a lot of remote-based systems, including remotehamradio.com and privately owned W7DXX, it's actually a club, use them. Quite a few people use them for clubs and for remote operation over the years. Then we had to upgrade it again. The K3S came out in 2014, even better performance. And that extended the line up until just recently. And of course, those have been very popular too. And to see that we actually did a little better, we got some great quotes out of the reviewer from QST. You can see Rick Lindquist, who's for the QST LORL for quite some time. His opening comment was, let's get it out of the way right off the bat. The K3S is the best performing transceiver I've ever used. We even edged out the K3, so not a bad deal to keep that going. It's a little hard to keep doing it better each time. We actually agonize over that for each new major radio in their category. But so far, we've been able to eke it out as technology's gotten better, and we have new parts to work with. And of course, learn a little more about design along the way too. Came out in 2016 with a smaller version of the KX3. We dropped 160 and 6 meters off it, internal lithium battery, and you can carry it in your pocket. And this is just wonderful for SOTA, especially people that are hiking on top of mountains to get to them versus driving to operate. And that's become very popular also. So both the KX2 and KX3 have done very well. They've sort of taken over that. What we used to do with the KX1 small radio, that's no longer sold, but these are our extreme radios for portable operation. KX3s actually, we have a 100-watt amplifier matching form also called the KXPA100 that people set up their whole station with an external PX3 pan adapter we have for the KX3 and a 100-watt amp, and they pick up radio and go portable with it. So it's a nice combination radio. I won't go through these ad nauseum, but this gives you a little feel for the features of the KX2. It's half the volume of the KX3, only weighs 13 ounces without the battery. And it's got the same trail-friendly radio TFR form factor as the KX3 and a smaller, similar user interface. And I have it in a little bag that I can pick up and go and take with me. During Q&A session, I'll show that to people if they want. And great for stealth TV ops. Both Wayne and I have actually DX'd from the kitchen couch with either a wire or now our AX1 portable antenna, and had fun with that. not a bad deal. It goes up to 10 watts and also has a built-in mic if you want to use it without the external mic. It's a little one, just a small little hole in the side of the radio and little condenser mic, or you can plug an external MH3 hand mic. When we introduced it at Dayton, it was interesting. We had actually, this talk about viral marketing, we actually had not intended to make any noise about it until we got to the show. And it actually had leaked out through one of our distributors in Japan, who the translation didn't realize either what day was what day, across the time zone, or that they needed to embargo the information we sent them, so they knew what was going on. And so they had released it in Japanese, and somebody actually in England actually saw what they had done and copied it to English, and it was all over the internet. And the morning I was going to Dayton before the show, I was at 6 a.m. at San Jose Airport getting ready to get on a flight or waiting for it. And all of a sudden my phone started going crazy. And I go, what's this? And people are saying, yeah, did you see this? And I go, oh my gosh. And the word was out. So by the time we got to the show, we were mobbed. And this, you can see in the middle, that was Lisa, who was our head of sales at the time. I think her computer just crashed because she'd been trying to enter too much stuff and the internet was being flaky there. And we sold just a zillion KX2s at that show, including, I think we brought ones to sell to people, pick up at the show. We sold out of those, of course, the first morning. And this fellow was walking around the show with a walkie-talkie style with, I think it was an MFJ whip on it, and having a great time. I've since met him in person, but somebody took this picture and posted it on, I think, Twitter, and we found it and finally reposted it on our site too. So we had some happy customers at that show. And this is inside my car. It's a little Toyota RAV4. And this is a much more current shot, but I have the KX2 mounted above my tri-bander, I think it's a Kenwood 72141, I forget the number, I think 41 radio. And above it, you can see the KX2. That people think that's a control head, and that's actually the whole radio, though I do have a 100-watt amplifier on the back if I need it. So it works great as a mobile radio too. So we have fun with it, get on the air once in a while. Now, a few crazy people. This guy, Emil, I think it's DL9JJ, we have the call a little off. He's a professional mountain climber when he's not a professional IT guy in Germany. And he is just an amazing guy. He's one of these guys who can free climb. And he's at the shows over in Europe that we go to, and talked me into selling him a KX3 and then eventually the KX2. So this is actually off of his website. And he climbs mountains or just encourages people to go do SOTA summits on the air any way they can do it. They don't have to be as crazy as he is, but he's definitely at the extreme end of extreme. Yeah, DL8JJ is at the top there. And neat guy. So we have some crazy customers out there with these guys too. This is Steve, WG0AT, that we call him the Goat Man because he has a couple of pack of goats that go up with him on his the expeditions. This was 2016 cover of QST. He's got a KX2. And I think that was before, I don't know if it was on this day, it was August. So that was actually, the picture was probably taken before we announced it. He was one of our field testers and a very active SOTA guy. Those are the guys that do that. And of course, at the other extreme, not to be leave everybody thinking we're all just QRP guys, we came out with the KPA 1500 in 2018. It's like a scaled up KPA 500 pin diode switching with LDMOS devices, and there's quite a few of those out there now. It's one of our most successful products, and it is done very well. Of course, even at the high duty cycle modes like FT8, a lot of folks, if they're operating 160, I guess they call 1500 watts QRP, but I haven't had to use it for most HF on digital modes, but it works there too. And it talks to the K3 and certainly our newer radios like the K4 and any other manufacturer's radio out there in a way that it follows you around smartly, and its auto tuner remembers where you're tuned. So here we come to the latest stuff. This is the K4, and the latest and greatest radio that we've come out with. I'm going to go through this in a little more detail, and then I'm going to finish up and open it up for any questions afterwards here. So that gives you a little history as we get up to the K4 of how we got here. And you'll see a lot of the K3 DNA in the K4 in terms of the design, though the rubber buttons on the front are much firmer. It's a stiffer durometer material, and rather than going directly to contact the PC board with a conductive puck, we actually have mechanical switches underneath. So they actually have a mechanical click when you push the button, so it's a very positive feel. The radio has nice both touchscreen 7-inch display for span adapter and regular information and adjustments, but we also have, for all the key buttons that you're touching a lot, physical buttons, and that's important to us, not just have a software-defined radio that's just a computer screen in front of you. And this also displays on external monitors, things like that. So we had to do better with the K4 even. So how do we do that? This is a direct sampling SDR, software-defined radio. That basically means we go direct after front-end bandpass filters and the TR switches into analog to digital converters, very high-speed ones, and digitize everything, and all the back-end demodulation or modulation on transmit is done through the digital signal processor on the system. We basically cover 160 through 6 meter, all modes, 100 watts, pin diode, TR switching still. The whole DNA from the K3 followed, the K3S follows up in that part of the chain in terms of the 100 watt sections. Dual receive all versions. We have a dual pan adapters if you want, so you can see 2 bands at once. The first two radios in our sequence, K4 and K4D, which I'll talk about a bit later, don't need crystal filters. It's all done on the DSP. So you don't have to buy hundreds of dollars of crystal filters, more than hundreds, like you did in the K3. Audio, very nice, because you don't have to use crystal filters on transmit, for instance, and also on receive. Yeah, you don't have the variable group delay that you have through crystal filters. So it sounds just wonderful in the air. It's both low fatigue use. I've got this feedback from our field testers or con testers. They said they were amazed. It's much like the later Kenwood, I think it's 930 radio that came out years ago that people used to rave about the audio. And they said we're in that category. They're very happy with it. The fatigue factor from other radios they've used is quite a bit less over a long contest or chasing DX or anything late at night. And for ESSB and people like that, it's wonderful too. We have built-in equalizers on the screen you can bring up to basically adjust the frequency response on receive and transmit for you. So you can make your condenser mic sound like a Heil HC4 DX mic, or you can make it sound like a hi-fi mic if you want. High-res color touchscreen, you can touch the tune to select signals, and of course, like bring up band buttons with band stacking register, stuff like that we couldn't do physically because we didn't have enough physical button space on our other radios, and now we can do that. There's a better picture of it. You can see on the left-hand side, those gray buttons are tune and tune low power, and also turn on off our auto tune or tell it to auto tune and memorize a setting for the frequency you're on, turn on off Fox, put the radio in transmit, or even test mode where it acts like it's transmitting, but it's not. So you can test it out sequencing for external stuff. Antenna selection, we can select up to 3 antennas if you have our auto tuner installed. And we can also, on the receive antenna, lower right hand of those left-hand gray buttons, lower right-hand side, the receive antenna can be selected for the main and then the sub-receiver being the second VFO, to come from multiple sources, up to 5 if you have the auto tuner installed with its antenna switching. And then 3 knobs that control 3 different groups you see on the screen there for CW, words per minute. Usually if it's sideband, those switches, I think, to mic gain and compression. And then you have delay. You can tap the button or tap the screen to change the delay section and adjust your delay or power on the radio. And then a filter, you can continuously adjust filter bandwidth. Or I'll mention in a second, there's a button over on the right to let you have memorized bandwidth, like a crystal filter select button. So you can do either. And also you have shift and width, or high cut, low cut optionally. You can go between those modes on the buttons there. And then RF adjustment for both the main and the sub receivers, and optionally squelch if you need that for some bands. Certainly FM mode, but some people like to use sideband squelch too. And then over on the right, we've got things that you touch often, like memories for CW memories, voice memories, frequency recall, direct frequency entry, preamp, noise blanker, noise reduction, auto notch or manual notch. Middle of the right-hand side of the dark gray buttons on the right above the big VFO knob, it says FIL, F-I-L, that's your memory for filters, so you can memorize filter settings. And then VFO control in the lower bottom row, A-B select or switch, and reverse for temporary listening to the other VFO, spot, copy A to B, and also a mode button lets you select mode. One thing we do, by the way, is whenever possible, if we've got a physical button and it's practical to also have it on screen to select that, like how do you select mode? You can reach over and the lower right-hand gray corner above the big VFO knob, that button that says mode, you can bring that and it brings up a display that has sideband CW, lower sideband, upper sideband, data modes, RTTY, you can pick it. And then you pick that and it goes off the screen. But if your fingers are already over by the main screen, if you reach up and actually tap where it says CW for VFO-A or VFO-B up in the middle of the screen there, that will also bring that up. So we try to redundantly do that. Same thing, you could push the A-B button and hold it to go into split on the lower left-hand side above the big VFO knob. Or you could just tap the TX button, and that will move TX over to B to turn split on, and tap it again to turn it off. So we do things redundantly, so you can pick your way of preferred interaction with the radio. Not a lot of buried menus. There's some for setup and things like that. You actually on the menu button. Display, I don't have a detail on it, but lets you basically configure the band adapter to be single band like you see here, or we'll show you a split band in a second as I switch to the next screen. By the way, the three knobs on the right, main VFO is the big one, VFO-A. VFO-B is the sub-VFO. We can also hook up one of our K-pods over USB, which is another big VFO knob that you can actually have it control RIT, XIT, VFO-A or VFO-B with a little switch. And so you can even have another big VFO knob for VFO-B instead of the upper right-hand one. Lower right-hand one is XIT or RIT adjustment too. Here's a dual spectrum display. And this is directly off of the, we also drive external video to external monitors. I can copy the main screen out if I want to that. And this one shows 40 meters on the left, looking at the CW band, and then the sideband part is 20 meters on the right. And so now you can actually tap the tuner and drag your finger if you want, or use a mouse and do that if you want on this screen, or an external screen if you want. But this one's directly captured from what we would have on the main screen, so you can see all the functionality there. And by the way, in the lower left-hand corner, we have a status up right there. It's showing current drain, and I think that was with at full intensity and everything turned up with loud volume, and 12.3 volts on it and stuff, so you can see that too. So some features of the K4, we're using a very fast new generation Shark ADSP from 489 from Analog Devices. This allows us to do some neat stuff, and it's even got we had great low latency delay signal processing in the K3, S and K3, but it's even faster now, and very quick, fast transmit receive for data, and of course, fast CW breaking. We've also got a new advanced DSP noise reduction algorithm we've been working on, using a modified spectral subtraction algorithm instead of the more common LMS algorithms, which a lot of radios have for noise reduction. They work, but they tend to sound a little bit like this, with a variable filter that builds itself around the voice that you're listening to, for instance. And spectral subtraction, especially the way we've done it, actually accomplishes the same thing without that barrel sound, and is much less fatiguing to listen to over time. We've also got a built-in external 10 megahertz reference input. Everything in the system is slave to a very accurate 10 megahertz source in the radio, but if you have a GPS-based one external, we've got a SMA connector on the back you can plug into it, and that's standard in the radio. So if you want to be super, super accurate, you can do that. I won't go through this in detail, but it's the back cover for those of you that want to see what you can connect to. This is if you have the auto tuner installed, you've got antenna 1, 2, and 3 off of that. What says antenna 4 in this picture is now, I think, called either VHF, UHF, or XV. That's the output from an optional transverter internal module that'll bring something like 70 meters for your VHF, UHF for the AM band in K4, but we've actually got a slot in there, and we've already been testing that for transverter use. Also support external transverters, so you can see the connectors in the middle there for transverter IF. 12 volt DC out for powering, it's a switch DC for powering other external devices. I think it's 1 amp or 1.5 amps. And also, in addition to those 3 antenna outputs, antenna 1, 2, and 3, you can select the one you're not transmitting on, the other two to be a receive antenna. For the other receiver, if you have a K4D, so you can receive not just on the antenna you're transmitting on, but if you have a K4D with a second A to D converter, and I'll talk about that more in a second, that gets you the ability to listen to 2 different antennas at the same time. Or you can select transverter input if you're not using external transverters. Receive antenna 2, you see below that, that's the second B and C in from the left. And then that can be one antenna input, and then receive antenna in out for people that want to have specialized receive antenna filters they want to put in line, or have additional DSP analyzers like the SPI SDRs, things like that. They can hook it up there too. That input can also be a receive antenna input. So you have 5 selectable receive antenna inputs. I/O on the right, on the bottom 2 rows, is very similar to what's on the K3S or K3S for analog line in and out, speakers, mic and headphone, reverse panel stuff. You plug in there instead of the front. Independent panel and key inputs, straight key input, and also key out and key in for like a foot switch, and key out for an out. We've got several command interfaces on the radio. You can talk to it still over RS-232 if you want, or have it just echo what frequency we're on to a step-by-R antenna, controller or something else out that port. We've also got USB connections up in the top. The square one for PC is a USB-B connection that then goes to a cable connector on the other side. Plug into your radio for rig control, remote control, logging, whatever you want. And the USB-A connectors there also give you the ability to plug in keyboard, mouse, flash drive for storing configurations on. And then you can also control it over Ethernet. And we can also stream for remote control pan adapter data out that Ethernet connection too. So a lot in one box. Won't be a test on this afterwards, don't worry. So I won't go through these in super detail, but basically a very powerful ATU like on our other radios. It's a switched L network for maximum efficiency, and it's up to a 10-to-1 SWR from 80 through 10 and 5-to-1 on 160 and 6 typically. And mentioned 3 antenna jacks. It has the matrix to let you select from 5 receive antenna sources, including the other 2 in the radio off those B and C jacks. And memorizes, once you've taught it your antennas, it's just like you've got a matched antenna where it just goes click as you tune up to that frequency and pause, and sets the ATU where you're going to operate next. I mentioned the I/O for Ethernet, USB, and audio. And audio also is built-in sound chips. So we basically can do data mode to the single cable with control and digital audio going to your control computer for FT8 or other digital modes. We have an independent monitor output that can have just the pan adapters or a copy of the main display, and eventually other stuff on it too. And we also mentioned support to tape pod external tuning knob and matching 1500 watt amplifier. And folks that ask us why we made the 1500 watt amplifier RF deck the size we made it, it has a matching power supply also, is because we wanted to match the K4, which we had in process, but wasn't coming out as early as the 1500 watt did. So you can see them together. Makes a nice pair. And basically when they're hooked together and talking to each other, it's like a 1500 watt radio, and you don't even realize the 1500 watt amp is there, except that you're louder. Getting to the end of this, the modular and upgradable stuff is you can upgrade when new technology becomes available. This is something that's really important, is that in the case of the K3, for instance, when we came out with the K3S, we had new synthesizer boards that were quieter and faster switching, and improved things quite a bit, both on transmit and receive for people with the K3S, but we also made them available for the K3, so people could upgrade their radios that they had over time. That was very popular. Well, in a DSP radio, the analog to digital converters, the A to Ds, are one of the critical areas in terms of their performance, both in terms of their distortion characteristics and how many bits of data they can digitize at once, things like that, to give you more signal dynamic range. We've got very good ones in there now at 122.8 megahertz, but they may get better in the future, 5 years down the road. And those are on plug-in cards that have the analog to digital converter, the direct digital down converters, for those of you that are into that on I guess it's now owned by Intel. It was Altera field programmable gate arrays, and then a little PIC processor manages that on those cards. So who knows, if something comes out higher performance in the future, we may have an upgrade there for people. You can also upgrade from a basic K4. It has 1 analog to digital converter. That gives you 2 receivers off 1 antenna. So you can listen on the same band to both sides of the D Expedition that way, independently on each ear, and display it on the pan adapter separately. You can even have different bands if your antenna supports multi-bands. So you have to make sure that the bands that you're listening to are not, and the antenna basically are not above our low-pass filters. You won't be able to hear the up point, or we have to bypass the filter so we can turn those off on receive if you want, or the bandpass filters. The K4D adds a second A to D converter. It's sort of the sweet spot for people that want to do listen to 2 different antennas or 2 different bands optimized at the same time on different receivers. And it also gives you diversity reception. You can listen in the same band on 2 antennas. It could be a wire and or 2 different wire antennas or whatever you've got on the low bands, especially. And if they're at different altitude or azimuth, they'll fade at different times. And so that makes a big difference on receive. The K4HD adds an additional plug-in card set that gives you a superhead front end, which adds a little bit more dynamic range on blocking dynamic range, typically mostly for D Expeditions that have multiple transmitters, within walking distance of each other. Though even there, the K4 itself, which has close to 130 dB of blocking dynamic range, does very well. So that's an extreme case. A lot of folks will buy the K4D, and they're going to get the HD as an upgrade maybe later on. So I have a number of people just say, give it to me all now, and I'll wait, when the HD comes out, but I want to get that. And then, of course, the future VHF, UHF module on that guy, too. One last thing on the K4, and that is it's fully remotable, and it's built into the software really from the start. We've got a very fast multi-core processor inside the radio. Software is basically client server inside the radio. We have 3 software modules, one called K-Serve, which is the traffic cop on top of everything, watching what's going on, talking to the other UI, user interface, and radio control section. KUI is the UI code that covers what you see on the screen and button interaction, all the user interface there. And then KRAD is the physical radio control, which even has its own PIC microprocessor for fast TR sequencing. And K-Serve can either talk to KUI to inside the box, or you could have another radio talking to it over the Ethernet, and it'll stream PAN adapter data to it and everything else. And we've been demonstrating it at Dayton when we were there a year and a half ago with the first K4s showing that. And actually, this was a teaser picture I'm showing here because I had a K4 on the shelf, and I think we put this on Twitter before Dayton a year and a half ago, showing some upcoming radios. And if you look closely at the tablet I have in my hand, which is wirelessly connected to the network, it's the same display as on the K4. And it was actually running the user interface as a demonstration program controlling the radio. I had that at the show controlling a K4 and another K4 controlling the K4. We could all fight over who was tuning the radio at the same time. You couldn't tell in the case of the K4s which one was real and which one, when I say real, connected to an antenna, which one was remote controlling. And so we're eventually going to come out with a shortened panel that's got the full K4 front panel with PAN adapter for remote control, where you don't have to have a computer involved if you don't want to remote control the radio with full functionality remotely. So fun stuff. I won't go any more about all of this on remote operation as I led up to that, but it's that will be coming out shortly after we start shipping radios here this next year. That'll be shipping, I hope. A couple of quick pictures, fun stuff. DXpeditions, we've become, I think, the standard of DXpeditions for the last 10 years, certainly all the big ones, including Marty Lane over on the right in Madagascar. And lower left-hand corner was VP6DX, if I remember correctly. That was the first DXpedition I mentioned with K3s. Sayatomi, I think, up there in S9DX. This was South Sandwich Islands a few years back with the penguins. Those are real shots from down there. Those are all K3s. This was me back up there, yeah, right here. Heard Island, all K3s. I think we had KPA 500s down there also. A very successful DXpedition. South Shetland Islands, for those of you guys around, the later pictures of these domes on these islands down the Antarctic with the real penguins. And they were not moved for the, well, actually, they were not harmed for this ad, though. 2 penguins that were under the middle picture on the top there for Indexa, we graphically did move them to the left, but we didn't manhandle them in the process. This was a very successful expedition, though they almost got blown off the island and almost lost all the radios. The storm came out really bad and actually almost covered the tents with snow, but more importantly, almost blew them over. You'll see some pictures that QST that show those tents almost flattened. They were holding up with their hands while they were operating. And they evacuated to the ship when it was blowing, I think, icebergs into the cove they were in, and thought they were going to have to leave everything behind. But the storm let up. They could get off the next island. The next day, got everything off. So we got the radios back that we'd loaned them for that. I think they bought a bunch of them. A number of the ops liked them so much. So there's a list in the lower right-hand corner. You probably can't read it, but all the different DXpeditions in the previous 4 or 5 years, and quite a few. So it's been very popular for that. And we're already having interest in the K4 for the same reason. Of course, my kind of DXpedition is a little more low-key. I do take a radio on vacation once in a while. I'm a hobbyist in scuba diving. My wife and I both dive. And this was down in the South Pacific with a KX3 in between diving on a little island in the Tahiti area. And I had a blast just with a little vertical whip on the table. So get to have a little fun with that too. There it was outside. So beverage my choice that day was very warm, was just water, but it was pretty cool. So that's it. I know it, apologize for taking that long to get there, but hopefully you guys are still with me and awake, and I'd be glad to answer questions. So I'm going to switch back from sharing my screen just to having me on the screen, and I'll let Ed and Mike get things so that you guys can jump.
All right. Hey, that was great. Boy, I've written a list of questions. I bet some others have as well. Ed, do you want to chime in?
I'm going to let the folks go ahead and ask questions. I have one question maybe towards the end, but we're good with for me here. Just glad to thank you, Eric. That was fantastic, as I expected.
This is Dave, N5CU down here in Texas. You had mentioned you're going to add in VHF and UHF to the as modules, but do you have your own transverters?
Hi, Dave. Yeah, so you're asking if we have our own transverters, and we used to sell XV1, XV50, XV144, 222, and 432. The parts finally became hard to get, and the volume had dropped down quite a bit because like a lot of radios have 6 meters and so on. We slowly stopped making most of those. I don't think we sell any of them anymore.
Okay.
But we had that technology. We do have internal transverters on the KX3 little portable radio. We have a 2-meter one and a 4-meter one for that market. And we have an internal transverter on the K3 that we sold, the K144XG for 2 meters. So we have that technology. So on this board, it basically takes that and takes advantage of the direct sampling also as a way to do the transverter where we undersample and have some front-end filtering for that. So we will have certainly 2 meters, and for the European market, probably 70 megahertz, the 4-meter band. And then hopefully it's a dual band one, so it may have VHF and UHF one. That's actually in development right now. We're doing some testing because we want to make sure before the K4 ship that everything's working for that in terms of interface, and we'll be fine-tuning that after we ship the first K4s. Did that answer your question?
Oh yeah, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. By the way, I hope I'm not talking too fast for people. This is actually slow for me. It's tough when I'm trying to cover a lot for you. I didn't know how long it would take, but hopefully that wasn't too long for you. But go ahead. Any other questions? What do you guys got?
I'm curious, and you may have covered this because I was just in awe over your presentation. How did you come up with the K? Everything's a K series. Did you mention?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm curious now.
Yeah, it's sort of K gets involved in everything now. You notice we have K-Serve for the software, CUI for the K. You know, I joke about that subtype. You know, K-Rad for the radio interface. It started out. We were introducing the K2 right before the year 2000, and as we were introducing it, we were thinking that. Well, first of all, it was I forget how we picked K2 on it. It wasn't. It was more for a mountain peak in terms of. It was. I actually have taken mine up to the top of Squaw Valley in California, which is a ski resort at about 9,500 feet or almost 10,000 feet, and operated. So in the summer on a mountain bike going all the way up, but I had to climb 1,000 feet vertical to get up there. That was a lot of work. I wish I'd had a KX2. It would have been a lot easier carrying it on my back. But so we were calling it K2, which I think was at that time was the second after Everest was the second either highest or difficult mountain to climb. So that's how we sort of came up with it. But it actually was going to be, we thought about that, and actually Wayne said maybe we should call it the 2K, and then I realized all the the press about the year 2000 software meltdown. People were worried about that, so I said no, we should go back and call it just the K2 for the radio. His prior radio that he had designed was called the Sierra, so that was another mountain-oriented radio. That was a multi-band plug-in radio, that larger blue radio that you saw in that Japanese picture.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of those out there too. I still have one with one band module built, and all the rest of them not because I didn't want to wind all the torians. But it's still they're still out there. But that's how it came apart. So that was the first radio, and we just sort of continued with it. So the next radio came out was the K1, which was a smaller radio. So you went from 2 down to 1 because it was CW only and QRP, and then the KX1 came out. The X became because of extreme portability and small package. Wayne talked me, letting him do that while we were working on the concept for the next generation radio, the K3. We'd started working on it back in the early days there. And then, of course, I said, Wayne, do you want to delay that? We wanted to get this out. And he'd already designed it, so I didn't stop him. So that was very popular. And then from that point on, the KX2 and KX3 obviously made sense. We started KX3, the little bit larger one, and then the KX2, and we shrunk it down. And those are both what I call extreme portable radios. And then, of course, the K3 I developed a K2, and now we've got a K4. And then KPA for power amplifiers, I guess. So the K line, by the way, we had the K line for all the K3, P3 pan adapter, and KPA 500 amplifier. And now we call the K4 with the KPA 1500, the new K line. So got both covered.
Neat. Hey, Jim Dickman, you have a good question. Go ahead and ask.
You got me off guard there, Eric.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, what's really popular here in Virginia is 220. And if you're going to do that VHF, UHF module, you'll get a lot of people buying them if you put 220 in them because nobody else is serving that market. So
I know I was an old 220 operator myself. I've got a lot of 220 FM radios, and when we first came out with the external 220 transverter, for the, and that was for the K2 originally, but for the K3 also. That was very popular, though it slowly declined, obviously, over time. So it's a question of how big the market is. We might do that there. I'd like to do it myself personally. I'm just trying to figure out if it has a return on it. It may be that we, if we're able to make the board where we could stuff it differently, we could literally have the same basic design with different components on it. Have one of the bands be 220. You know, it might be 2 meters and 220. I think 2 meters is always sort of the base radio band people want, you know, for weak signal stuff, especially the moon bound skies and things like that. But and also FM. But having the other one do 220, for instance, might be it. But we haven't actually solidified what we're going to do in that area. So I'll keep it in mind. I can't promise it yet, but you never know.
Our 220 repeater here in Virginia, the system in Virginia is now, as of a few weeks ago, hooked into San Diego.
Oh, cool. Which network is it tied in over? Do you know?
All-Star.
Okay. Yeah, that's the internet stuff is just taken off in that area with voice over internet using SIP protocols. Very familiar with that. I'm a remote kind of guy too. I've been that from the start. I used to operate my home station. I have a repeater. I have a repeater still operating in my house here on UHF. And I used to remote control my HF station. So when I was driving to and from work, I could work with a friend that was a cell engineer in the US, putting cell sites in Argentina. And the only time he'd get on was when I was driving home from work. So I had it remoted to my car where I could do that. It was sort of fun. But also a lot of 220. I actually still have a lot of 220 FM stuff over here.
It's hard to find the gear.
Yeah. So other questions? Anything on the K4 or other radios or things you guys like to see us do, or what can we answer for you?
I can't ask you, I'm not smart enough to ask the question right, but could you give me a moment about what the receive diversity might do for me with separate antennas on the K4 or the K4D or whatever that hardware is?
Yeah, that would be the K4D. And it's like the K3 does that already too with its two synthesizers. When you in the K3, you had to install a whole nother receiver board in it. I mean, it was very expensive. But, with the K4, you get that with the K4D with the extra analog to digital converter and just a bandpass filter front end. And what that allows you to do is that if you just think about it for a second, you know, we're listening to HF signals at night. They fade in and out. You know, just like you listen to broadcast band, and especially at sunrise and sunset and broadcast, as that changes, you get phase cancellation. You might get ground wave coming, canceling with skywave or different path, you know, skywave stuff coming in as it changes. And by using two different antennas, and they can be wires at different altitudes, or I have a 40 and 80 meter dipole, maybe at different orientations and altitudes. I'm down on 80, but I'm using the 40 with an auto tuner on receiver, or even that one. And that becomes my second 80 meter receive antenna. In the radio, in the K4D, you can say, okay, on my left ear, I want antenna 1, and my right ear, I want antenna 2. You just put the radio diversity, and you do that, it treats it like a single receiver. You know, you can listen. You can still transmit on a different frequency, by the way, so you still have that. So you still have a VFOB to operate split if you want to work a pileup. But it puts your two receivers locked to the same frequency, so it's convenient to tune around. And I got a question about K4. I'll answer it. Someone put it up in text on the screen. I'll answer that next. And so what's cool about it is you have your headphones on, or you can do stereo speakers. We can drive our own. We have an SP4 speaker for the K4, for instance. It's like the K3 SP8. But that will let you actually listen to the signal you're trying to hear. I've had it like on 160 trying to work a station when the band's just opening up. And it's like having a force multiplier. It's our big antenna Yagi in the sense that as it fades out in one ear, it'll just be coming above the noise in the other ear. So you should get used to that signal moving back and forth in your head a little bit, but that takes some getting used to. But once you do that, you're hooked. I mean, the contest guys love it because the signal that would fade out, they would miss a contact and have to ask for a repeat. They don't have to do it. DXing, you can work weaker stations at the edges of when the bands are opening and closing that you wouldn't be able to work otherwise. It's pretty powerful for that. Did that answer your question on diversity?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. The text question I saw up on the screen, people are asking, are we still going to ship in the July, August time frame for the K4? That's what we're shooting for right now. It's realistic. I've been saying actually for last month or so here, it's more likely going to be closer to the end of August. Everything has to line up. Obviously, the biggest problem right now is a lot of the suppliers to us, not all of them, because a lot of them were supplying essential industries, slowed down their production. Or, for instance, some of them, like there's a company that winds toroids in Mexico for production in companies. You know, we buy them as parts, or another company, Borns, that makes dual the concentric pots that we use for volume on A and B. They manufacture those in Mexico, which I have no control. It's a U.S. company, but that's where they're coming from. And so some of those got slowed down because those people shut down, of course, quite abruptly and stuff. And they have backlogs. So we're trying to get everything in. We think we've got enough for initial quantities to start shipping. Might be some start and stop as we get going here around the end of August. But I'm holding out hope here that we'll get the first radios shipping then. And then we'll be ramping up as fast as we can after that. I've got a lot of radios on backlog and a lot of anxious customers. So we're going to do our best to get them out. It's never easy, and it's always going to be that first 3 or 4 weeks drive me crazy. If I had more hair, I'd be losing it. So, but we'll be pushing as hard as we can to get it there.
We definitely had some questions written, one of which is, why doesn't Elecraft sell through dealers? I'm sure there's a reason.
Oh, very easy. You want the price to go up a bunch, we'd have to be selling through dealers. We sell direct everywhere in the world. I do have offshore distributors. They actually mark it up more than what it would cost to buy and import it, because they have to make some profit too, but they provide local support that people want. And so they operate in parallel with us offshore. In the States, though, the problem is if I went through distribution, say through DX Engineering, who does sell some of my smaller stuff that is lower volume for us, like the XG3 signal generator and stuff. We sell those direct too, but they sell them. We would have to price the radio quite a bit higher just to cover their profit margin. We're not, be competitive with stuff that's built over in Asia, for instance. We built everything in the States. It's not built offshore. We buy some parts from all around the world, of course, and some pieces and stuff, but not all the assembly, test, design is all done here in the States, in California for the most part. That basically, the only way to be competitive from a price standpoint is for us to sell direct. We started that with the internet back in 1999 when we first started taking orders, and we've stayed with it. And it lets us get closer to you guys too. We can service you, you can get a hold of us, and it builds a good relationship with the customers. That's why we don't do that. So if you want to get your hands on one, it's going to be one of our customers who's evangelizing and showing you this neat radio we just got, or it's going to be at the trade shows where you can touch and feel them. Or visit us when you're out, of course, in California. You can see it too if you can get out our way. But we're going to be more on the internet these days, obviously, so you'll see more demos. And by the way, coming up, there's some of you, if you're AWL member, you probably got a blast from them today announcing that there's a virtual ham fest called QSDO Today Expo, I think it is. And that will be, it's being sponsored by ourselves, ICOM, Flex, I think DX Engineering, a number of other people. It's got a lot of other smaller vendors too, but it's all virtual booths. I've got a presentation on the K4. It's more detailed with live demonstration of it on there. And we'll also have people available to answer questions and stuff afterwards, all through, I think it's early August. I forget which day it is in August, but it'll be on the web afterwards for presentations and stuff. So that's another one. I'm sorry?
I think it's the weekend of the 8th and 9th.
Yes, that's correct, I believe, yeah. So you'll see us listed on there. I'm giving actually, I just got the video back. It's actually prepared ahead of time. We have professionally filmed, so you'll see a couple of commercials from us up there that we've got running. We'll put those on our website too for the KX line and for the K4 and KPA 1500. And then a talk on the K4, a deeper dive on the K4 with it fully operating and demo and stuff like we would have in a real trade show booth. It's just sort of cool. And then we'll have text interaction with folks. I don't know if they have voice or not, but we'll be live talking back to people and stuff like that. So we've got a long weekend for us for that one. We're going to have a bunch of us, myself included, live on the air. So on the air at the show, at the talking the show.
N4RLI. Ralph, I know you know how to use a microphone. Ask that question, sir. Unmute and go.
Well, just sort of a fantasy question. I've always wished I could have a radio about the size of the KX2, which I do have, by the way, but which would do digital modes like FT8 without needing external.
Without needing stuff? Yeah. There's my KX2 right there. So you can see how small it is. Yeah.
Yep. Also built the K2. I love that.
Oh, cool. You've been through the whole cycle then. That's
well,
neat. The K2 are still selling. It's actually, we sort of forgot about it a little bit. It was low volume, but we kept making them. We can get the parts for it still. And I'll answer your question on the FT8 here too. But I started saying, hey, let's advertise it some more. So I put a banner ad up on QRZ, which is a very effective website because we look up call signs on there and stuff. And all of a sudden we started selling a bunch of them, more, even more than we had been. And so it's picked up. When we ended up, did some special runs on the LCD displays and things like that for it, so we could keep doing it. Relative to FT8 inside the radios, it'd be very tough to do that inside a KX2 or KX3 at the level of what you can get with the external software running, on a PC. And of course, the processing power for, they're using the sound card for all the digital signal, not digital, but the analog to digital conversion, and then they process it in the back end in their system. People have asked if we could put it in the K4 because we have basically a Linux-based core in that system that we modify it. It's highly customized, but we can't promise that. We may have some apps, but we don't know if that'll be there in the future. Reason being, we just don't want to take up or promise something that might take too much capacity. The other problem is that's an evolving, if you're talking about FT8, I mean, if you've been using it at all, you've known it's gone through some generations over the last year in terms of capability. We'd never be able to keep up with that. That's the biggest worry we have and people would want it for free probably. So it's always, when people think software is free, they don't realize my biggest expense in developing a radio, it's not the hardware design, it's the software. I've got more engineers on software on the K4, for instance, than I have on hardware. It's amazing. It's just a lot of work. Go ahead,
definitely just a fantasy, but
well, you never know.
Thank you for all the great products that you've already developed and are marketing right now. And like you said, I really enjoyed building that K2. It took me back to building the DX60 when I was 14.
Wow. Yeah, that's why we still do it. People want to build, it's like people want to build a sailboat or an airplane or anything. If you can say you built your own HF high performance transceiver from, almost from scratch. And we provide the design on the circuit boards, but you're soldering all the parts and testing it and making it work. That's a fun radio.
I've got an off-topic question.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned California Burger twice. Is it just because it's no longer around, which I did my research, it doesn't appear to be, or is there a story or an affection, or you spent many hours and had?
No, well, I spent just the NorCal QRP Club had their monthly meeting there where all of these guys would show up and show off their modified radios. Or of course, Wayne actually helped found that club. So I didn't even, I hadn't met him when found he was member number 3. And he did the NorCal 40 as a way to build membership. I think they sold over 1,000 of those through there. There's a email reflector called QRP-L that's been around for years. And that's why we actually did the K2 originally, targeted towards that audience before I had the 100-watt version, because we knew we'd have an immediate interest in that crowd. They like to build, they like to modify, and so on. So it was just a place where they held it. There's a big flea market in Livermore outside of Silicon Valley that happened that same weekend. So you come over there after the flea market. You go to the flea market at 6 and see what you can find outside, and then come over there. But I didn't even know I haven't been there in ages, so I didn't know if it's still there or not. But it was just off the freeway, about 5 minutes from where the Livermore flea market was for ham radio gear, or test gear, whatever was there, just outside of Silicon Valley.
Dennis, WR4I, Charlottesville, Virginia.
Hey, Dennis.
Hey, great presentation, and I feel like talking to the president of a big organization here. So met you many times at Handfest. My question is on this KX2.
Right.
How come you can't charge the battery inside the rig? I feel like I'm going to break it every time I unscrew these things, these tiny wires. But this is it's been a great battery. This thing is amazing how long it lasts.
You might show the guys the battery there. I don't think they can see it there. I can pull one of mine up here too. Yeah, there's one here too. Yeah, there's the battery right there.
Yeah.
By the way, you can plug in. I carry a second one with me because you can use the same internal plug to plug into the radio externally. I don't think you can see me.
Yeah. Right, I do. Yeah.
But anyway, so the reason is basically at the time we designed the radio, 1, we didn't have the room for the additional charging circuitry. And 2, we were concerned about heat generation inside the radio and having stuff that would damage the radio. So that's why we made it easy with those 2 thumb screws. We can just pop the back off and basically pop it out and then pop in another one or whatever if you want. But then we have a little external wall wart. I've got one right here. There it is. So I just plug the battery into that, and little red light turns green when it's charged, and also it all fits in a little bag I carry around with me here, the little shack in a box we've got.
So as a side note, my wife and I and some friends took a trip around Canada for 10 days, and I took this with me, KX2, and never worked anybody never worked anybody, but I got into the reverse beacon network all over the place, right? This is in Alberta, Canada. The only ham I worked was in a, what are those cabs, the ones that you call on your phone, the cabs.
Uber?
An Uber driver. I saw a 2 meter rig on his dashboard, and I said, I'm Dennis WR4I, and he said, I'm VK whatever, VE2 whatever, and that was my eyeball QSO out of whole 10 days. But I worked the heck out of the reverse beacon network, so I know it got out.
Cool.
Thanks for answering the question. All right.
Sure.
Hi, Eric. Joe, K08V, also from Charlottesville, Virginia.
Oh, yeah, that was Charlottesville. Great. Hi,
Yes, sir. I have a question about the TX sample in that I noticed on the back of the rig, and
Yep.
I assume it's pre-distortion. Is that going to be available at ship or sometime near
No.
future?
Hopefully near future. Yeah, it's a teaser on there, obviously, but the hardware is inside the radio and handles that whole channel of basically if you have some, either we can sample internally, I believe, for picking up RF samples, but if you want to get it externally from an amplifier, for instance, linearize the whole chain, you'd have an external coupler going back into that, providing a like 60 dB or 50 dB down signal back to the radio. That basically then can be routed to, I think you have to have the K4D to do that, because you need to be able to, while you're transmitting, well, even not, no, you can use only a receive channel. So we have a digital up converter, it's a separate DA converter, so for transmitting. Basically like a receiver, you're basically looking at that signal in real time and using that to linearize, say, hey, you characterize that transmit chain. That's, I think, realistically, probably a year out before we actually would have that option turned on. But internally, I don't think we're going to have to change anything. It looks pretty good. So that would be a software upgrade with, if you wanted to put something off an amplifier, which is just linearizing the 100-watt radio, it would use that jack coming into it. And that would be a coupler that we sell that you can pick it up with, or use one that you might already have. But I'm going to be conservative on that. We might beat that, but I want to get the radio shipping and everything else going first. It gets pretty busy once we actually get them out there too, obviously. Get a lot of feedback and we have to react quite quick to that.
Okay, thank you very much. I just have to say that I enjoy my K3S, and I anxiously awaiting the my K4.
Thanks for your support on that. But by the way, the KPA 1500 has a RF out sample line already. So,
okay.
And I know it works because some of the other guys that have stuff that can linearize actually are using them. So it works pretty well.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Okay.
This is Ed,
Hi, Ed.
KW4GF. I've got a anecdote and then I've got a question. The anecdote for the Virginia folks, because they'll get it immediately. One day I took my KX3 and I had just gotten the AX1 antenna from y'all, and I thought, well, I was visiting my stepdaughter in Franklin County, so I went up to Mill Mountain. So I was at the top of the Mill Mountain near the Star and near the picnic tables. A lot of you might know where I was at. And I'm operating, and I guess made 5 watts, and probably within, maybe 2 minutes, this big gun station from Texas comes in. And he said, well, you got a mighty fine signal. It's a 5.9 plus 20. And I said, well, you're amazing. You're a 5.9 plus 20 here on the top of Mill Mountain in Roanoke, Virginia. So he said, well, you're doing 5 watts. What are you using? I said, a KX3. He says, well, what kind of antenna are you using? And I said, I just bought this AX1 antenna. He said, let me look this thing up. He looks at it and says, you're giving me this signal with a 5.9 plus 20 with that little antenna? I got to get me one of those. So I thought that was hilarious. The question I have for you, Eric, is firmware updates. There's a rhyme or reason, because I kind of look at the thing, I kind of forget all about them. So I try to train myself around the seasonal changes, like when we're supposed to change our batteries and our smoke alarms. And that's the only way I can remember to check the firmware update. Is there an away message or anything when those things occur?
we typically will post major updates to Twitter and to our email list. We'll mention that we've done stuff. And in the case of the K4, because it also has an internet connection on it, you can do downloads directly to the radio from that, and you can check and see if there's new software available. One of the goals is to have you just push a button on the screen there and say, is there new software? Oh, there is. Hit download. Just like updating your, say, an Apple iPad or iPhone or something. They have a new operating system out, that kind of stuff. And we've actually already got that working because all of our field testing is being done that way with the field testers right now, where they can basically, actually we have a little more basic just based on our engineering tool that has two different. You can load the firmware, and you load everything, but you don't program the firmware first. You just do the software, then you do the firmware for the chips. And we'll make it a one-button push for you guys. But we'll have that option, or probably be able to load it if you don't have a computer hooked up to the radio from your computer into a little flash drive and stick it in the front too, and download it that way.
Hey, Thorsten, KX4OK, I muted your mic, but do you want to ask a question? I know you got disconnected for a while and just got to join in on the group.
First of all, I want to say thank you to you and to your whole company, to all the people who are involved in the production of the wonderful rigs. I'm a very, very proud owner of the KX2 number 75.
Wow, early one.
I've never had a rig like that before. I'm a QRP fanatic man, and this is by far the most wonderful thing I've ever owned. So, question for you. I have an issue with the main dialing knob. When I rotate the knob, the frequency is jumping. So the knob is not working properly. Is there any way to dismantle the knob that I can check it? Maybe repair it or something like that?
It's, well, that's I believe a mechanical, ball bearing mechanical encoder. Actually, you've got a very early one. There's a better version of that mechanical encoder. Think of like a potentiometer, like a variable. It basically creates pulses as you turn it. And the very first KX3s, and you've got certainly a very first run of those. You said you're under serial. You said you're serial number 75. You said, I think, is that correct?
Yeah, KX2 number 75.
Yeah, KX2. Yeah, KX2 serial number 75. So. Actually, in KX2s, we may have always had the same one, but you may have to replace the encoder on it. It's a mechanical operation. It's not tough to do. You obviously pop the radio apart the way you do it. You have to unscrew you have to probably take off the knobs and unscrew the front panel. Worst case, we can do it for you, but it's not a terribly expensive thing to change. The biggest expense will be the part. I don't know what they sell that for, but if you contact our support guys, either support@elecraft.com or you call in and you're able to get them on the phone. We're still catching up from the shutdown, so they're backlogged a couple of weeks, I know, on a lot of stuff. People, if it's an emergency, just call in, that kind of stuff. If it actually is causing you real problems, you can do that. You can also, I would think you want to talk to somebody first to see if you want to do the work recoding it, replacing it versus your customer. Are you used to working on small stuff in terms of pulling apart mechanically and stuff? That'd be the main thing. It's not. If I remember correctly, I don't think it's soldered to the board. I think it's got a connector that plugs into the KX2 boards, the digital boards in the front. They basically have a digital and an RF board in the KX2 sandwiched together, and the encoder is connected to the digital part where the processor is and all that stuff. So as long as you
Well, I'm familiar. I'm very familiar with dismantling these things, but the question is, where can I get the parts that I need?
You have to get it from us.
We have the local dealer. Well, not local dealer, but the one of your international dealers is in Berlin. It's the company. It's called QRP Project.
Shop.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Project,
So Peter passed away, unfortunately, some months
ago.
But
Nick is still running the business.
Nick is still there, is still running his business. Also his mom. Yep.
Yeah, Nick, they're great. I've been, of course, very good friends with Peter for years, and it was sorry to see that happen. It was a tough thing. I actually got to see him.
Great.
See him and hang out with him at Friedrichshafen a year and a half ago.
Yeah,
the last big show he went to, and that was wonderful.
Yeah.
But they're good. So they can get the parts for you, and they're very competent. They may even be able to do the work for you. If not, sometimes even if they're too busy, they'll forward stuff down to our European repair center over in Bologna, Italy, Carlo Bianconi. He's also a distributor in Italy, but
Yeah.
he's like a Ferrari mechanic. He can, fix anything, and he even has his own machine shop. But so he's a fallback also, so he can get the parts sent to anybody either way for you.
Or I will combine that with the next visit to the United States, and
You'd be surprised how many Europeans. Once they start travel gets a little easier here, we'll definitely see a big flow. Every summer we get people coming out to visit. It's a lot of fun. And the folks come actually. There's a big DX convention called Visalia in California, International DX Convention, and we always get a flow of Europeans visiting the factory because we're just a couple-hour drive from there, from the Central Valley where we are on the coast.
Okay, so the last question: when do you throw the KX4 on the market?
Right now, I'm so busy with the K4 that I'm not even thinking about follow on the KX line. Bonus, you won't see anything in the KX line this next year. I mean, it's not that. We always think about stuff in the future, but when we're selling a lot of KX radios, and so there's not an urgent need to change that. But we're always, planning. So when we have to do it, we can move in a different direction. But I don't even know what form of KX4 would take these days. It's hard to see sometimes, but you never know.
Thank you very much.
No problem. I'm still good, folks. I got water left in the bottle. So who else has a question?
Ian, November 8 India Kilo. With the K3 sugar at the out of production, is it fair to assume that firmware upgrades have ceased also on that?
Okay. Question is, if the K3S and the K3 by inference also, of course, are out of production, are we going to be doing software updates? Well, certainly not as often. I won't promise everything's obviously right now our whole software team's working on K4 stuff. But if there was some major bug that showed up or something we felt that really was worthwhile from a improvement on it that was something within our capability of doing, we could do it. But I'd say at this stage, they're not going to be coming that often. We are supporting options for people to add on to it still. We have some in stock, and we're actually on the ones that stock is getting low on, we are putting up on our webpage. I don't know if they've got it up yet. A sign up list saying I'm interested in an upgrade board. You have a K3. You have a K3 or K3S?
I have a K3S, early K3S 1011.
Okay, so K3S. In most cases, you've got almost everything you want in that, except if you didn't have a sub receiver, things like that. Some of the guys want to upgrade K3s to K3S close, by adding the I/O board for USB and things like that. Those will build for people as the synthesizers. People want to upgrade things like that. The crystal filters, by the way, were manufactured for us by International Radio to our spec, and anything that we don't carry in stock for those, he's going to be carrying, because that's his business. He sells add-ons forever for stuff. So just to get the word out, he's in. Is he in Knoxville? I forget where Scott's located, but he's down in that part of the world. And
mine's completely loaded, except for the 2-meter module. Fantastic radio. Thanks so much.
I'm sorry, you're not. I can't hear you.
Mine's completely loaded except for a 2-meter module. So it's a fantastic radio. Unbelievable specs.
Yeah, we may actually have. I think we're out of brand new. We may or may not have 1 or 2 brand new 2-meter modules left. We do have some that we call ready replacement, which are basically almost as good as new. They're warranted the same way. Either they were ones we used in a demo radio, and we're no longer using that anymore for obvious reasons in terms of demo radios. So we're selling off the old demo radios and things like that too, or the ones that don't have, they're separate from it. So always check with our salespeople and see if they've got something in our refurb demo stock, and they might surprise you.
Thank you.
No problem.
My name is Joe. My call sign is KI4OHR. And actually, it's my wife's question. And her call sign is KK4JFK.
Okay.
Okay. So the question is, are you in the future going to sell your amplifiers separate than your radios? In other words, could you use your amplifiers on other radios?
Oh, easy. We're already doing that. All of the KPA 500, actually the 100-watt radio amplifier, 100-watt amplifier, the KXPA 100, the KPA 500, and the KPA 1500 are all designed to be usable immediately out of the box with any radio that can give us RF and PTT. They've got built-in frequency counters. They'll follow you around. The auto tuners, once you set them up and memorize the tune for your frequencies, will automatically select the right tune. Radios that provide band data ahead of time. We can read ASU style band data, or I think in case the 1500, I think it can read, the 1500 can read CIV icon data also. We even have cables for that. So, all the amplifiers are designed because that's a broad market. We wanted to hit that immediately. So they're designed to work with the broad, just about any major HF radio on the market out there today. And a large number of them have, not just using the frequency counter and the amp to figure out what frequency you're on, they can tell us ahead of time where they are. And that includes our competition, Flex, and people like that too. We have a lot of their customers using our 500s and 1500s.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thank you for doing the presentation. We appreciate it.
Yeah, enjoyed it. It's a good crowd here.
I have a question.
Sure. A nice picture of is that the person talking with the K3 in the rack there?
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about. I'm sure you've had a lot of roses thrown at you tonight, and I just wanted to throw one more.
Oh, good.
I've got a K3, a late model, so that it's got a lot of the S stuff in it.
Sure.
KPA 500 and a CAT 500
great.
that we use using remote hams.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you know WA6HHQ, Roger.
Yeah, Roger has a lot of the software for that. By the way, the guy that created remote hams is Brandon, who actually works for us as a development engineer, and that's why the K4 has all the remote stuff built into it, because he wrote all the remote ham software. Not the remotehamradio.com, but remote hams, the free stuff. So
right. I'm aware of that, and all I wanted to do is to tell you that a colleague of mine who might choose to say something I don't know, he may already have said something tonight, had been using this for a number of years now, remote. I have never operated a radio, a package, so to say, like this with remote hams that works any better. It is amazing. And if you need an ad written on the use of the K-line, as it were, as a remote station, it's pretty amazing. I could not endorse it any more loudly. It's an amazing radio.
Yeah, feel free to send us an email. Just send it to, maybe you could send it to me, Eric, E-R-I-C, @elecraft.com, or to sales@elecraft.com also, so they see it. Anything you want to say, because, and we'll check with you if it's okay to post it somewhere else, but we love those. That's great. Yeah, that's the remote stuff. Is the whole idea there was to make it as easy as possible. And Brandon actually developed the K30 mini hardware for me. There's an interesting story behind that, by the way, how we hired Brandon. He had was working in a totally non-technical area as in the custom cabinetry area, and he'd been doing it since he got out of high school. But a self-taught, brilliant software engineer and a ham. And a friend recommended him to us. I was looking for a tech to support at the time what we were doing with remote rig radios, boxes that hooked up to the K3 to do remote operation with other interfaces that people had. And I wanted to do a remote controlled radio. I had like a K3 sort of stripped down where we just had the front panel on it, but not shortened like the mini that we did. And Brandon came in with a software solution, showing me what he had done with remote hams, and he was already controlling a K3 from remote ham software. And he didn't even know that we developed a higher speed, non-published internal software protocol to talk to hardware externally remote on the K3. So he showed me his thing. I said, hey, come down the hall for a second. Let me show you what I've got in the other room. And I had a K3, basic K30 and a K3, but not the K3 mini, the K30 mini, just the K3 wired up just the front panel. And the remote rig box is talking. And I said, what I really need right now is one, I'd love to help you integrate that more with yours, because we've done a special high performance command set to make it work faster than the regular rig control. And also we need somebody to support this as we get it going. And at that point, his industry had just cut back, and they had cut back at his company, and he was looking for work. So it couldn't have been better timing, and I'm glad we got him, because he's turned out to be a very good software engineer, both obviously in hardware. He did like I said, the whole package for the K40 mini. And needless to say, our Elecraft stuff interfaces very well with his software as a result. So he's been one of the primary architects on the client-server architecture in the K4. And that's why I've been able to demo it remote already with pan adapter streaming and everything. So it's been a big help. Sort of fun how you find people like that too. It's a good crew.
Well, if the K4 integration of the remote is as good as remote hams, you've got a winner already.
Well, he's already working to integrate it with remote hams. Some of the work, like the rather than relying on he's a software-based solution for anybody else that's looking at runs under Windows. A computer, a laptop, say on each end, that one controls the radio locally and then talks to the other one. And then you can hook a K40 mini over USB into your other remote laptop and control the radio and have their laptop provide the audio through its sound card digital interface. In the case of the K4, the audio is transferred independently between the two radios. He'll probably provide the initial connection, and the pan adapter is direct from radio to radio also. So, or for multiple radios, he may stream it if you have multiple users, like he does in remote hams. He may also, have that set up to go to multiple places. But we basically have multiple connections to the radios simultaneously, both inside and outside. So it'll be fun stuff. That's going to be developed over the next year, I'm sure, to be even more powerful than it is now.
Let me ask, John, do you want to say anything about the remote?
I'm up here, Eric, and I live in North Carolina in a retirement community, no antennas, no rigs. So I've been using Carl's rig there in the rack more than he's used it. So I've been using it through remote ham. I wish you'd convince him why I need the K4 because right now I don't see how remote hams would let me use the features of a K4.
Oh, it will. No, the whole point of the K4 is we will provide, are you using just the software in remote hams, or are you using the K30 mini hardware? It has the same front panel as the K3.
Just the software, just the remote hams.
Yeah, well, remote hams let you go either way. In other words, some users can be on software only through the laptop. Other ones can use the laptop and have a K30 plugged into it.
Right, software only.
Okay. In his case, it'll work that way. I don't know. He possibly can take that same stream. I haven't talked to him about this. And he could display it probably on the laptop if he wanted to also. That's a bit of work, but he might be. Brandon tends to do a lot of stuff without telling me. He already have it in there. I don't know if he's been working on it or not. He and Roger are both great. Roger actually writes a lot of our production test software for us too. And that's why you see some of the guys that do remote ham stuff with K3 radios obviously got KPA 500 support in it, and they have KPA 1500 support in it too that Roger wrote. So,
well, Carl, did you hear him say we can do receive diversity with the K3S?
Yes. We have not. In fact, John, I've got that. The antenna is just about up to do that. Eric, the only other thing I would say is that Roger has been spectacular in helping us fully integrate with N1MN. John is a big contester. It sings with N1MN perfectly, remote hams and the K3 suite. What the last thing I would say about this is it's up 24/7. There's a Windows machine that we never reboot. It's run for months and months and months. We used your accessory with a web relay that John can power it on through a browser. And you've just got a spectacular system. And we believe, of course, this is the way things are going. John doesn't want me to retire and go into the nursing home, into the retirement community with him. He wants me to keep this thing up and running. So,
well, there's actually a lot of people doing that. The W7DXX group, if you look them up on the internet, it's a club that people make. It's a donation supported club, and down in Las Cruces, and he has a whole station there running a KPA 1500 K3S. I think it's K3S, and he has been using our stuff for years down there. And people use either they use remote hams software, and some have just the software display. Other ones want the feel of a real radio, so they get a K30 mini, and those are out there in the market. We may make some more if we get enough demand for them. That there's some floating around out there, but those are neat little remote control panels for the K3, so that works good too. But in any case, the K4, it'll be one of the key things we've done with the K4 and the way I demo it is remote control. We're also going to make software programming interfaces available so other people can do what we're doing right now. I mean, a good example is Brandon took our user interface code for the PAN adapter and user interface in the front panel of the radio, and I have it running under Windows. That's why I was showing that picture during the talk, where I had a tablet hooked up, and I can control the radio. And that wasn't a full app, but you can see Brandon taking that same code and putting that into remote hams. I'd give him permission to do that. So he could have a little module that displays the PAN adapter on your computer screen also. So stay tuned. You never know.
I
Gotta
guess
get the radio shipping first though, so we won't have that quite yet.
I guess I had one more thing. The more metrics and the more the faster the stream on the metrics, the better. I don't know whether
You say which metrics are you talking about?
For example, power out, SWR, ALC. Notice the camera. Can you see the camera in front of the rig now?
Yeah, yeah.
The camera is staring at the KPA 500 and at the CAT 500, because sometimes with remote hams, the KPA, the CAT 500 gets out of sync with remote hams. It thinks it's supposed to tune, but it's not. So there's a camera that's online, again, 24/7, looking at the front of these so that John can see what's actually going on the front, because the video feed as a metric is faster than what we get through remote hams.
Okay. Well, I know in the KPA 1500, we of course we have Ethernet connection on that, and Roger wrote the KPA 1500 remote software for us. So that's got quite a bit more metrics than the 500 does. I think he wrote the KPA 500 remote. Maybe not. He may have taken that over. I think it may have been Brandon that wrote the original version of 500 remote.
But let me say that again. Being the remote user of Carl's stuff in the rack, with the way our remote was set up, I could not tell if the Elecraft tuner got out of sync.
Yeah.
And
it's probably more a question of what the remote tuner software could give to you. I don't know if you can actually run stuff in parallel with remote hams to get that information.
Well, the video's in parallel, and that's great, but it seems like an overkill. Likewise, I don't like the digital power information coming through RC4. I'd rather watch the video.
Yeah, I understand that. If you look at, we actually, on the newer stuff, I know at the KPA 1500, we actually have a pretty dynamic, bar graph display.
Maybe Carl just needs to maybe Carl needs to get a A4 and a KPA 1500. Yeah, okay. Well, that's all I need to hear.
Eric, I would love to be a test site for that if you'd like to. I'll give you a UPS shipping address and we could just move on.
There you go. I got a few customers to ship first on the K4s, but you never know. I saw somebody waving for a question. I don't know where they went, but
yeah, I was going to ask because we should probably let you go and wrap up with the video here. Any other questions for Eric? It's been a great.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Real great. Made my day. Glad you were here, Carl.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Eric, and thank you for the club that put all this on. Fabulous.
Yeah,
it's been a lot of fun tonight here. It's still early for me. It's probably like tougher for you guys here. It's coming up on 10 o'clock at night. For me, it's dinner time. My wife's probably going to come upstairs here in a minute and say I'm getting hungry. So
all right. Thank you very much again from Germany.
Okay, well, it's good. And of course, what for you? It's late at night. Wow. So thank you very much for being up this late.
It's 3:51 here.
Lots of coffee, I think, tonight.
Hey, Eric,
yeah.
Special shout out to your gals over there, Madeline Gomez and Michelle. Yeah. They worked well with me, and also your whole customer service. And I'm going to give you a compliment, your company a compliment. I call it the second coming of Tentec, because Tentec had the same reputation back in the day, and I owned Tentec products when I first became a ham. Yeah. And I will tell you that your customer service, anything down I need, anything from a thumb screw to a tune-up, they're willing to do it, and I appreciate it.
Great. Well, that's what we try to get them to be, those kind of people. So it's tough on them right now trying to catch up from the shutdown, but we're digging our way out of that hole, which is nice in terms of backlog on customer support calls and stuff. But it's nice to see people are getting good feedback and good support. I overspend on support. I look at it as part of marketing, for the company. If we don't do a good job with that, it's more valuable than an advertisement, actually, if we do a good job. So we always want to do a good job with that.
Great philosophy. Well, hey, Eric, we here at East Coast Ham Operators really appreciate you being with us tonight. This has absolutely been a learning experience, speaking for myself and many others. Actually got a future customer coming up. We really enjoy having you join.
Just dream KX2, right?
I'm looking at that or the 3. Oh boy.
Or the 3, either one. That's the idea.
Yeah.
It's Benjamin, KG4EIF, Charlottesville as well. And how much of your team are hams versus non-hams?
100% of our engineering team is hams. Most of them are professional engineers also. Either they worked in Silicon Valley or other areas. Dick Devendorf, for instance, who does a lot of our utilities. KPA 1500 code was an ex-IBMer, ex-Microsoft person. He ends up actually in Whidbey Island in Washington State, out of Seattle. The customer support people are hams. It makes sense because they're interacting with you guys directly. Let's see, at one time, actually, 2 of my sales and marketing people got their ham tickets. I don't think they operated a whole bunch, but though most of them can talk the talk pretty well. Madeline and Michelle do a great job. Also, Margaret, who's our director of business operations and marketing, is very good, and so she does it. But they're non-hams, but they actually know the language now. It takes anybody who comes into sales and marketing, when we had to hire a new person, we tell them it's going to be at least 6 months before you understand everything, or even at best what you're hearing. It's a whole new language, right, in terms of how we talk. Manufacturing, actually, our current person that's the manager back in manufacturing is a ham. He actually got it. He wasn't a ham originally, and he's a math major, but he's actually got his ham ticket now, and I don't know if we have a couple more folks back there that might have them too. So I'd say a good part of the company in terms of the certainly engineering, management, like myself, all the development engineers, hardware and software, all have ham tickets. You want them to understand what they're designing for, and then also all the techs. We actually find them usually through local ham clubs and stuff. So the local technicians we hire that way, and number of them actually, I remember the 2 most senior techs, Vic, actually is he's a sort of continuation engineering guy. He was originally at Seagate, retired out of before that out of the Coast Guard as a technician in the Coast Guard. And Renee, our lead tech on the KPA 1500s, has been with us quite a bit of time now. And he, before that, was doing IT work and stuff for Pebble Beach, the golf course down in Monterey. So you never know where you're going to find people.
Very cool. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for staying in here. I'm going to let you guys get on and get to bed or whatever. It's getting late for you too. And enjoy talking to you, though. It's been very nice.
Thank you again for taking time out of your day to chat with us. I consider it a chat. And I think you've had a very happy crowd. It looks like an anxious crowd for a K4.
Oh, we're more anxious than you guys are. We want to get it out the door too. I mean, obviously that's how we survive as a business, is shipping products. So we want to get that one going. The good news is that we're shipping a lot of the other products in the meantime. So we're going to be here. We're not going away, which is good.
Anybody else? Last call.
Yeah, I don't think your customer is going to let you go because every time I see on QRZ people are selling their Elecrafts, the only reason why is because they're upgrading. So that just tells you the legacy of your company and yourself, that that is going to always continue for as long as you're
thank you. We appreciate it. Just you guys keep telling your friends, and new hams and old hams alike. The word of mouth in this industry is huge, so it really helps a lot. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.